Welcome to EXPLORE-OVERLAND. And this vehicle here, 1998 Land Rover Discovery, I'm doing up as a runabout. I'm going to put some club reg on it and use it for running around. But what I am going to do is I'm taking off the plastic sills and the front and rear bumpers, which are pretty light on these vehicles, and I'm putting on some bar work for some off-road. But other than the bar work, the car will be kept standard. It's going to have all the standard height springs and all those goodies for off-road. It's got a snorkel on it, which it come with. And the other thing that I might do to it is put a Detroit locker in the rear, but I'm still not sold on doing that. But we'll see how we go in the future. But I really would like the car to be completely standard so that when I'm out touring and that in it, I can show people just how great and capable these vehicles are without all the gear. And the same things that made these vehicles really great off-road, being small, light and agile, make them really, really good on-road too, as opposed to, no, I mean, they handle really, really well, as opposed to the bigger full-size 4Bs. Anyone that's ever driven one and punted it pretty hard through the corners and that knows how well they handle. And that's pretty well because of their great centre of gravity. And yeah, it's a totally different story on the bigger full-sized, probably Japanese type 4Bs. They tend to lean over a fair bit, a bit like P&O Fairstar coming into Princess Pier or something. But these old buses handle really, really good. You know, they just bop through all the corners nicely. So that's the main reason I'm using this as doing this up as a runabout, because they are very, very nice to drive as an everyday vehicle as well. And really, of great 4x4s of all time, is something that you can run about in as a daily. I don't think there's a better vehicle. So what I'm doing here is I'm mixing the bar work up a bit. I'm making something different to what I've got on the Sanglow, the yellow vehicle that I normally drive in EXPLORE-OVERLAND, and just going a whole different route with it. And you know, getting the bumpers to wrap around and be more factory. You know, be more like something that they would have released at special vehicles or something like that, as opposed to looking like a 4x4 off-road demon with all the stuff on it. You can get around pretty well stealth and not have law enforcement looking at you all the time. And with these sills that I'm working on here at the moment, the bits of tube that I've got on the vehicle at the moment, they've got a nice even curve. I've bent them up so that they follow the underneath of the doors and the guards, which has got a curve on it if you've ever noticed on the Land Rover Classics and the Discovery ones. So I just wanted to follow them as neat as I could. You can't see where I'm going with it at the moment, but I'm going to get the top of it, like the floor of these steps, to follow under the doors, you know, maybe a 20 or 30 mil gap underneath, and then get that to run from the outer edge of the piece of tube back into the inner sill so that it covers that whole section like the original plastic sill did. Whereas on the yellow vehicle, I've just got them decked out, you know, for heavy duty. I'm not worried about any of that sort of stuff. You open up the door and you can see the gap and all that, but this will be different. It'll be very tidy when you open up the door as well. And you can see with the ends that I'm welding on here just at the moment, they've got a curve that curves back in towards the centre of the car, both front and rear of the step. And that just allows, when the vehicle's in a rut or something like that, it just allows the vehicle to roll against the wall of it without at trying to rip the side step off, and it just pushes it. The rock will just push around it. A lot of them are just finished pretty straight at the ends, and even the ones that aren't, they sort of catch the rocks. This one, this is a very similar. The basic steps themselves are a little bit similar to what I've got on the yellow car, and they work fantastic. I've never been caught up, and have never been trying to rip the steps off the car as well. And with the Sandglow car, the bars on that have really protected it quite well. Anyone that's been watching either some of the Instagram reels or the YouTube videos can see it gets a really hard time. Sometimes I'm smacking into those walls flat out with the full weight of the vehicle, and the rear step and the side steps are mounted that solid, that it's getting the full force of the vehicle slamming into it, and I've not bent any yet, which is good, touch wood. All I've done here at the moment is that the first piece of tube, I've just put a couple of bits of scrap welded to the outer sill, where I'm going to modify later on, but all I've done is welded a piece at the front and at the back of the factory sill that just comes down enough that I could weld the first bar on, and then I can weld the next bar to it, like as I've done there. I haven't put any of the body mounts or anything on. I just want to get the sill on and looking absolutely perfect for clearance the whole way around before I start to put all the bars on it, back to the chassis and to the sills to strengthen it up, to take the forces of serious off-road. And it's business as usual here. I've made sure I've got sparks down my shirt and boots and all that sort of thing before I go and rug up. For anyone that likes being a bit creative, they know that issue. You usually get that carried away with what you're doing and that far into it that you usually forget all the protective equipment, and you're way into it getting burnt before you even know it. I am a little bit lucky that I've done the yellow one already with that basic steps, so I know what length I need to, or where they need to start and finish on both front and back, and it's quite deceiving. I modified the ones on the yellow car a couple of times. I had them paint them up and I was off-roading, and they were still rubbing. They just, every now and then they'd rub, and I've had to modify them a couple of times, but luckily that measurement's now perfect, so that's what I'm working off, and that's where you can see it's finished the front guard, at the back of the front guard, and those with a real hawkeye will see that at the bottom of that front guard has been cut, and you can see up to that first third of the panel where the first fold is. So I've cut 50mm off the bottom and then blended it in all the way to that first fold, back to the original line. And then I cut it and then folded it all up. And it needs to be tidied up. Luckily with this vehicle, or unlucky, it's going to be painted, the sides are going to be painted because of the damage I done to the vehicle, taking those rubber flares that were on it off. So I'll tidy that up and paint that as well. But, it's very easy to just, and how most of the bar work's made is people just go, well, I'll lop it there. Some, some people are putting 35s on, some are putting 33s on, and we'll just have it at this length. because I'm building everything for myself and I know what I'm going to have into the future or whatever, I know, I can build the car a lot neater and tidier, whereas, if you're allowing for everything, you just get bar work and stuff that, doesn't look as finished because it's had a fair bit left off it, just to allow for other things or things coming up. But, being personalised for my own vehicle, I can make things very tidy and get the gaps pretty close. But the reason I done that cut at the back of the front guard, that's very common on a Range Rover Classic or a Discovery one. If you're running 33s, that's a place that they rub. And I'll be putting the 225, 95 R16s, those same takeoff tyres as what I've got on the yellow one at the moment on this vehicle. And those tyres are pretty close to 33, although they're skinnies. They're a bit taller than the 750 16s. So they do rub on the back of that front guard. And the same problem is, you've got the same problem on the bottom of the rear quarter panel, both on the Range Rover Classic and the Discovery one as well, but we've deleted that because of the way I've done the bars, so won't have to worry about cutting any of that back. But it really is amazing what you can get underneath the guards of both the Discovery one and the Range Rover Classic. I had a two-door that I built 30 years ago, and I was running 35-inch Cimex centipedes on it, and I was running no flares because I can't stand those. Each to their own, and some people, people have got to cut the guards out, but I hate those epoxy flares where you just hack all the guards away and put 6 screws into them and screw them to the guards. And yeah, the obsessive compulsive, that just triggers it bad. So I built the two-door to run 35s with only a 2-inch lift in the vehicle as well. But I jacked out the guards and the quarters and just cut the bottoms of the guards like I've done at the front on this one. And I'll post some pictures of it up later on during this series. But no rubbing whatsoever, no epoxy fiberglass fares that it takes screwed to the body. And yeah, run 35s, no problem. Super long travel coil suspension in it. And yeah, you can fit it all in without ruining the look, that classic look of the Range Rover Classic and the Discovery one. And Discovery 2 as well, not to forget this Discovery 2. Yeah, if you can live without those flares, it's pretty good. And I mean, you can definitely live without them. It's just that most people won't go to that work. I mean, a lot of people just want to see that big rubber under there, and they just get the jigsaw out and the tech gun out, and next minute the fiberglass fares are fitted and the 35s are on, 12.5s, and it's looking the part. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. I just like to do things a little bit different. It's always been that way. And it's not that the other way's wrong. It's just that, I just like to do things different. It's good to be different. But it's not for everyone. One of the things I've tried to do, in all the vehicles I've built over the years, especially the ones, 25, 30 years ago, was doing serious off-road in the high country and all those, really good off-road tracks that are now closed. I always built my vehicles, I'd cut the vehicle away so I didn't have to lift it. I've never been, you don't have to be four-wheel driving long to know that lifting the vehicle is not good. Although you'd think the complete opposite at the moment, but if you don't have to lift it, that's very good for your balance, and you're going to get a lot further not lifted. But unfortunately, some of the bigger full-size vehicles, and especially the stuff like the Patrols and the old Cruisers, the 80 series, isn't it? It's just way too much work to fit big rubber under them without lifting them. And the easiest way, those guys just, body lift or suspension lift and just lift them right up crazy to fit the big rubber under. But what I used to do with my vehicles, but I cut in the guards, cut everything I had to not lift that vehicle and to get everything to clear for maximum travel. And that's everything learnt there is pretty much what I'm putting into action here with building these side steps and these bars. I've got a pretty good idea where all the limits are going to be, and I can set and test all of that before I even get to the off-road part. And those poly air springs that you can see there being lit up by the flash from the welding, they're coming out as well. They were in the vehicle. The guy I bought it off, that's something that he'd fitted to the vehicle. They'll be coming out. Okay, here we are around the other side, and it's the same thing again. And you're going to see the high-tech way I've got of bending these bits of tube, because unfortunately, using the pipe bender, you just end up with kinks, and there's really no other way to do it to get a nice, even bend the whole length of the tube, other than the way I'm doing it now. This was a lot of trial and error coming up with this over the years building sills, and this is the best way to do it to get a nice even bend, is you've got both ends up on a point, and then we're just going to hit the centre of the piece of timber and not the car, and as many times as we need to get that nice even bend along the sill. And what I've done here that you can't see, because if you don't draw a nice line right down the centre of that bit of tube, you'll be hitting it in a different spot on the curve every time. So there's what you can't see there is a line down the centre of that tube. So every time I go put it back down to hit it again, it's definitely the top facing up. And this is the real telltale, is just putting that bit of tube up tightly against the bottom of the doors in the front mudguard. And you can just see how beautiful the curve is. Well, probably not here from the camera angle, but definitely down there when you're holding the tube, you'll see how good you've got the curve. And for the second bit of tube that's going on the step, it needs to be bent exactly the same. But all you do, once you've got this one right and you're happy with it, the easiest way is to just, chalk a line on the floor, put it down on the floor and chalk a line, and then as you bend in the next one, you can just move it to the line and check it. And one of the things that you always need is that when you've got a garage with heaps of room to work on things inside, you need to go and buy as many old bombs and bits of stuff that you're never going to use and park it all in the garage so that you have to trip over it and move it every time you want to do something. That's just a rite of passage in a garage, and it's no exception to the rule here. Unfortunately, I got a bit carried away and jumped the gun with making the front and rear bars without the camera set up. But I will go through in the next day or so, and I'm going to cut up a piece of tube. I'm going to pie cut the piece of tube and show you how I went about doing the bends in these bars, because they've got some complex twists and stuff in them as well. And I'll show you the easiest way to do it with basic tools and to get the bends absolutely perfect where you want them to follow the curve of the car. And there's a lot of there's extra welding in it because you're welding up the back of the pie cuts. You're not cutting right through the pipe, but only some pie cuts in the back of it. But once it's bent around to where you're happy with it, then you just weld the back of the pipes. Which is what I've done here, but I will take you through doing one of the bends so that you know how it's done and where it's at. I mean, it just saves all the ridiculous, we'd all love the $300,000 pipe bender and all the other gear that goes with it and all these flash shiny YouTube videos and all that sort of stuff, but you can do the same work with basic tools, and I'll take you through how that's done, rather than running around trying to buy this and buy that, and best off to just get the job done. And you can do that with basic tools. Everything I'm doing here is with very basic tools. Probably the most high-tech bit, and it's not really that high-tech, is I've got a really nice MIG welder, 175 MIG welder, and that's what I weld with. And there's really no compromise on the MIG. It's a really nice setup. It just welds everything I need to weld perfectly. And I should mention you can use an inverter welder or a stick welder. Some of the inverter welders now, they're really, really good to weld with. It's just a lot messier and a lot more mucking around with the inverter welder. I do use it every now and then when I've got, say, an aluminium spool gun attached to the welder. Instead of getting the mild steel wire back in the welder and all that, I'll just pick up the stick welder and tack away with that. But yeah, the MIG's the way to go when you're building this much work. I've done the same thing this side. I've just tacked on a couple of pieces to the factory sills, a couple of bits of 50mm by 50mm square bits that drop it down to where I need that first bit of tube. I've welded the bit of tube to it, and then I've welded the same thing again to the first bit of tube to distance the space to the second bit of tube for the steps. That's what I'm doing here. doing any of this sort of stuff, the biggest battle is getting around all the excuses. If you can just work with what you've got, you can pretty much achieve anything with very, very basic tools. Instead of stopping and saying, well, I'll get this tomorrow, or whatever. Just keep going, and especially this sort of thing. It's hardly high tech. If you can't do it with an angle grinder and a few hammers and a welder, there's something wrong. And the workshop here is off grid, so it's you really are working with absolute basic here. There's no three phase. There's no. It's lucky to be power sometimes. It's very basic, and we just keep going and churn it out. Like the good thing is if you're really enjoying what you're doing, and it could be the first time or the 10th time you've done it, you just get so into it. The tools and all that sort of stuff are really just an afterthought. And you can hear the generator I've got going in the background just to run the welder. Some days it can be an absolute pain. Depends on what you're welding, and it depends how the generator's treating you for the day. You can end up with some fat welds and stuff like that when she starts to slow down, and all those sort of good things you get working off the grid. But it's job done. This is just fitting those tabs to the first piece of pipe so I can get the second one on. And what I'm going to be doing to all the bar work, front bar, rear step and the side steps, is I'm going to be fitting dimple dyed plate to top and bottom, just to neaten it right up and neaten the look up. And so with the side steps, what I'll be doing is I'm trying to angle up, and I've finished these at the moment, and I'm still not happy with it. I reckon I'm going to have to lower the bottom a bit more, because what I want to do is, when you're looking at it from the side of the vehicle, this is purely for aesthetics. When you're looking at it from the side of the vehicle, I'll have a dimple dyed plate along the top, obviously where you put your foot and your step to get in. But what I want to do is have a curved bit that drops down, and this is the reason I've tilted these steps up. They sit a bit lower than the ones on the yellow one by probably 50 mil. But I reckon I'm going to have to go a little bit lower, so that when you look from the side, the second bit of dimple dye will be underneath. But from the side, you'll be able to see those holes underneath while you're looking at the vehicle. It'll just set off the steps, being able to see that top and bottom of the side steps. Whereas the ones on the yellow vehicle at the moment, they're just dimple dyed on the top, and they sit flat as well, or pretty close to flat. So the obvious problem you get with that, and anyone that's ever built their own steps before, or mucks around with all their own stuff as well, the first thing that sets the alarm bells off is when you've got the steps at that much of an angle. If you push up against something, that's just going to push them up into the door. So I need to have them just low enough. I want to have about a 20 mil clearance underneath the doors and the front guards, as I mentioned before. But when the piece of dimple dye along the top, I want it to run back over into the factory sill, and then I'm going to have, so as it goes over and runs into the factory sill, at a couple of points I'm just going to fold some tabs up and then put in some riv nuts, but I won't use riv nuts because they just tear out. If it gets hit, I'll weld actual nuts into the sill. But same theory, and hopefully I'll be able to bolt in a couple of bolts where it goes into the sills directly across, so that if there's any force on the side of the vehicle, if I slam into a rut or something like that, that whole force will push up against the sill the whole way along, and that'll give it the strength not to fold up and fold into the door, which is, that's an age-old problem, that one. Your side steps just stop you from getting out of the car. These temporary tabs that I'll need to keep these bits of tube apart at the moment, they'll be cut out. So that's it for the first instalment of building all the bar work on this vehicle. There's a lot more to come, and a lot more detailed stuff in the next few videos. And the point I'd just like to get across one more time, this is all with very basic tools that anyone can do.